This is one of my favorite topic areas for two reasons. One is that who we are as human beings is so attached to who we are as emotional and feeling beings. And we don't quite know that much about who we are as feeling beings. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is in a little bit. But also in my own journey in these practices, taking a mindfulness-based approach to my feelings has had a monumental impact on my life. And so in today's lesson, we're going to really focus on one of the foundations of mindfulness of feelings, and that is awareness and self-awareness. When I see you next time, we're going to look at how we meet difficult emotions, and we're also going to explore empathy. And in our final session together in week 7, we'll be looking at this really interesting acronym called RAIN, and how we take this acronym to apply it in situations where we're feeling really snagged or engulfed or overwhelmed by certain emotions and feeling states. So as I mentioned the last time that I saw you, I really believe in the power of narrative and storytelling to convey information and to create connection. And so I want to offer you a story to start. And it's something that I actually experienced last night that's very relevant to mindfulness of feelings. So I was at a Father's Day dinner last evening, and I was having a conversation with my sister-in-law, who's a new mom. She had a baby just 6 weeks ago. So she and my brother had to, their child had to have open heart surgery upon birth. And although he's okay and he's been returned home locally, the little guy has been kind of struggling in his waking moments. He seems to be a little bit cranky, uncomfortable. And over the weekend, he had to go to the emergency room because he was spiking a very high fever. So my sister-in-law was telling me that while they were in the emergency room for about 8 hours, Ben didn't even whimper. In fact, he seemed to be very comfortable in the ER. And all of the nurses and doctors were commenting on what a good boy and what a happy boy they had. And Angela said, you know, in my entire history as a mother for the last 6 weeks, this is the first time that I actually felt really happy because somebody was acknowledging my son as a happy baby. And she asked me, you know, do you think he was comfortable there because this is what he was used to? He came into an emergency-like situation upon birth. And I said that I didn't know. But what I did know is that my sister-in-law felt great happiness in this moment of people acknowledging that her baby seemed to be happy because he wasn't expressing. He wasn't crying. He wasn't whimpering. And then my sister-in-law started to weep while telling the story and started apologizing to me for her tears. She was very overwhelmed by emotion, very embarrassed by it. And so I asked her, I said, you know, let's go sit in a corner away from everyone here at the party. And I want to know if you want to work with me a little bit around everything that you're feeling. And so we sat for a while. And what I simply did was I asked her if she could name, based on the physical sensations that were coming up, what it was that she was feeling. And there were 3 things. She was feeling fear, terror, actually. She said, I've never been so afraid in my life. You know, giving birth to this infant and immediately handing him over for open heart surgery, and then bringing him home and feeling really afraid as a new mom as to what all this meant. Can I even do this? So there was fear. And she said, and then there's anger. I'm really upset that this was how our child came into the world. I feel like we were ripped off. He was ripped off of the experience of what she called a quote unquote normal pregnancy and normal birth and the normal early days of a child's life. And she said, and I'm really pissed because my sister-in-law, who's my best friend, who gave birth just 6 months ago, has the good baby. He sleeps through the night. He cries very little, right? So there was anger. And then I think most important, there was grieving. Grieving the loss of all of the things that she dreamed about associated with being a new mom. All of the things she dreamed about associated with giving birth for the first time. And it didn't quite turn out as she had dreamed and imagined. So there were two things that were going on here that are relevant to feelings. One is this perception that little Ben, all right, that there's something wrong with little Ben because he cries more than other babies, right? That he emotes more than other babies. And she said, do you think it's possible that Ben is just a baby? He's just being a 6-week-old baby. And I said, absolutely. Why do we pathologize that? And the other thing that was going on was the shame that she was feeling because she was openly weeping at this family party. And this overwhelm she was feeling related to these emotions. She felt angry because she was angry. She felt angry because she was feeling grief. Okay? So this is like a secondary level of stress. It's sort of like when I myself get upset with myself for being anxious. I'm anxious, and then I get upset with myself about being anxious or ashamed about being anxious. And it's a secondary level of stress. So the relief came when I was working with Angela and getting her to both name what it was that she was feeling. Okay, there is anger here, and there is this sense of grieving here, and there's this terror, there's this fear. When we can name what it is that we're feeling, because we first have the awareness of it, that is the first step. I can't tell you how many people there are out there who have an inability to name what it is that they're feeling. And if we can't name it, and this is really important, if I can't name or define what it is that I'm feeling, what is arising, how can I imagine that I would be able to then manage it? How can then I imagine that I would be able to then respond appropriately to it? And we're going to talk about what it means to be a responsive person as opposed to a reactive person when it comes to our feelings and emotions next time. So step one is naming. And when Angela could name, this is anger that is present. This is grief that is present. When she could name those things, when you can name things that arise, you start to develop a little bit of a distance between yourself and the feeling. For example, rather than Angie saying, I am angry, I am grieving, I am afraid, I asked her to say or to ponder, grief is here. Anger is here. Fear is here. So she wasn't so identified with it. So we create a space, a spaciousness where I can both experience the feeling, but not be engulfed by it, ensnared by it, hooked by it, overwhelmed by it. And then the second question I asked is, where do you feel these things in the body? Where is your anger? In my gut. Where is your grieving? In my heart. Where is your fear? It is everywhere. Those were her responses. Same thing, you have worked now for a few weeks with the body and bodily sensations. If I can name what I'm feeling, I can start to tame it. If I can locate where it's visiting in my body, residing in my body, I can then start to create a little bit of space around it and kind of look at it. And the third question, and the most important question, which is going to lead us into our guided meditation tonight, is this. Given that anger is present, fear is present, grieving is present, can you be with those things? Can you just allow those things to be there? When we can name, and when we can locate in the body, and we can allow what is to be, therein lies our freedom. We're going to talk a lot next time about this notion of freedom, emotional freedom, or freedom from the hold that certain feelings can have over us next time. Okay? So I want to take you through our practice, and I'm going to then teach through that practice when we're through. Okay? But before we begin the practice, I want to invite you to choose a feeling that you've been having some difficulty with, a feeling that you've felt you've been challenged by. Anger, grieving, fear tend to fall into the category of what we might describe as the unpleasant emotions or the unpleasant feelings, right? So I want you to think about an emotional state or a feeling that's been really challenging for you. And you're just going to use that as a point of focus for our meditation. I want to share with you that in the mid to late 1960s, there was a clinical psychologist named Paul Ekman who was really interested in the universality of emotion. He wanted to know, are there certain human feelings, human emotions that are universal? It doesn't matter where you grew up on the planet, where you live, how you were raised. It doesn't matter how old you are, gender. Are there certain feelings that are universal? And so he set off to discover that. And indeed, he found out that yes, there are. And he identified what he calls the 5 core emotions. And the 5 core emotions, all right, are anger, sadness, disgust, happiness, and surprise. So anger, sadness, disgust, happiness, and surprise. And in his work, he suggests that all other feelings are somehow attached to one of those 5 core emotions. So for example, I was working with a client last night or yesterday on, he wanted to work on envy and jealousy. So when you think about anger, disgust, fear, surprise, and happiness, where would that reside, right? In the anger category. So you don't have to choose one of the 5 core emotions, but just kind of think to yourself, with whatever it is that you want to work on tonight, where do you think it resides in those 5 core emotions? But I share that with you just to sort of get you thinking about what you might want to work on. For example, as I'm guiding you this evening, I'm going to work on fear. Okay, so I'll be working internally on fear as I guide you through this. So all you need to do is choose one, and you are more than welcome to choose happiness, joy. You can choose peace, contentment. But it could be pretty interesting to choose something that's challenging. All right, sound good? Give me a thumbs up if it is. All right, I want to say just for a moment that I am so happy at how many people are on this call. This is definitely the most crowded Monday evening call that we've had, and it's really amazing and fantastic to actually see your faces. I really like seeing your faces, so I appreciate that you have your cameras on. All right, so let us begin. So we want to begin, if possible, with eyes closed. However, if it's not comfortable for you to close your eyes, we want to sort of keep the gaze soft, forward about 5 feet and down. All right, but that's completely up to you. I'm going to be closing my eyes. All right. And we're going to take the awareness all the way down with the feet or to the feet. And I just want you to feel the sensation of your feet against the surface of the floor or the ground beneath you, preferably uncrossed, about hip width apart. And I want you to feel the sensation of yourself actually sitting. Perhaps the weight of your body in your seat. Perhaps adjusting just a little bit through the spine so that the spine is long and straight and dignified, yet relaxed. And the shoulders come down and back. Allowing that spaciousness in the chest and in the heart. And just for a few moments, I would like for you to focus on your exhalation tonight, perhaps lengthening the exhalation so that it's a little bit longer than your inhalation. And that with each exhalation, you just allow yourself to drop down into a more relaxed state. When we lengthen our exhalation, we begin to create a quieting in the mind. And we tell the stress response, it's okay to just take a break. Now I want you to bring forward into the mind very gently that feeling that you wish to work on. And name it. For me, fear is here. And I want you to observe where fear or whatever feeling you've chosen is sitting in your body right now. Where is it taken up residence temporarily? Where is it visiting? And if this feeling had a color, what would it be? How large is it? Small is it? What is its size? What shape does it take? Does it have a texture? Is it rough, smooth, jagged? Does it have a weight? Is it heavy, light? What is its temperature? If this feeling had a sound, what sound would it make? If this feeling had a message, what would it be? And don't strain for the message, just allow it to arise. And if you had a message for this feeling, what would it be? What do the edges of this feeling look like? What do you imagine is beyond the edges of this feeling? Can you soften to this feeling? Can you soothe it with the tenderness and the kindness of a nurturing parent? And can you allow it soften, soothe, allow? For the last few moments of this meditation, soften, soothe, allow. Soften, soothe, Allow. Very gently, we're going to move out of this practice, just sitting quietly for a few more moments. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. Back into the room, back into the light. So I'm kind of curious if any of you would use the chat function to perhaps name the emotion you worked with and maybe just its color. Let's start there.
Peace, and it was blue.
Peace. Who's speaking? I can't. Tammy? Tammy.
Yeah.
Peace, and it was blue. Beautiful. Where did you feel it reside?
Mostly in my chest.
Okay. How big was it?
I'd have to say like the size of a square.
So it was in the shape of a square and the size of a square?
Yeah, and it was nice. It was very relaxing.
Yeah, good. I don't need to know this, but when I used the prompt about the message, was there a message?
I just wanted to be more at peace and let things go more.
Okay, good. Very good. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? You can also use the chat feature if you'd like.
Christine, we had an anonymous participant work with sadness, and the color was gray.
Excellent. Great. Anyone else? Defeat. Okay. Color for that, Marlene? No? Okay, yeah, okay, good. All right, I'm getting some private messages coming up, so this is perfect. So keep them coming. I want to just talk to you a little bit about what we did, because we invite you to use this practice over the next 2 weeks, or a modified version of it, and to work with a feeling like in the way that we did. So the first thing I asked you to do was these are great responses coming in. I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you. So the first thing we did was we made a choice what feeling we wanted to work with, and so we named it. Remember, you can't name it, you've got a lot of difficulty then dealing with it or managing it. We'll talk about that next time. So the naming is really important, and again, the naming helps you to begin to create a little bit of space around it. The second thing that we did was I asked you where it was residing in the body, and I used a couple of different words to prompt you there. I used reside, temporarily, where is it located, and then I used the word visit. If the feeling was visiting, where has it where is it sitting in your home, in the home that is your body? And the reason that I did that is really based on a children's book that I often use if I'm teaching children mindfulness approaches to their feelings or emotional intelligence. And the title of the book is called Visiting Feelings. And the idea behind the book is that feelings arrive to us like visitors. And just like a visitor would arrive to your home, your visitors do not intend to stay permanently, right? Just like feelings, when they arise, they don't intend to stay permanently, right? You think about this. I mean, this is something that we know about feelings, is that feelings are impermanent. They come and they go. We can get really spun up or spun out related to our feelings when we're fearing or we're imagining that they're going to stay forever, especially if it's a difficult emotion. So when the feeling visits, can we allow it to come in? Can we allow it to stay a while? Can we allow it to take up residence? And the question becomes, what kind of host or hostess am I going to be with the feeling that has just taken up residence for a little bit or has come to visit? And it's a really interesting way of thinking about feelings as visitors. Remember the story I opened with in working with my sister-in-law last night. Anger is here. Sadness is here. Fear is here just for now. Okay? I asked color. Again, when I work with children, think about this, and I say, what color is anger? Most of them respond with as many as just like many of you did in your responses here. Anger usually comes up as red or black. Anger is almost always depicted as being very large, right? I've never had anyone do this, child or adult, that has said, oh, anger was tiny, right? It's usually very large. Sometimes, especially children will say, it's bigger than me. In terms of location in the body, where is something like anger located? People across the board tend to respond in one of three ways. It's either in the gut, in the chest, in the mind. Oftentimes people will point to their heads. And as one 4-year-old, I'll never forget this, in one of my children's classes said, my anger is here. Put her hand around her neck, my anger is here. And I found that to be very intriguing. And I asked her about it. What does it mean that your anger is here? And she explained that when she feels angry, she feels that she can't speak. She feels like she's choking. And I came to learn in working with her in subsequent sessions that she grew up in a home where anger wasn't allowed to be expressed, like many of us did. I like to share that I grew up in the no talk, no see, no feel house, right? Especially when it came to difficult things. You didn't see that. And if you did, you're not going to talk about it. And you're certainly not going to feel about it. And many of us understand what that means, right? So being unallowed or not allowed to express those feeling states can create a number of different challenges and difficulties. So for this child, the anger resided here because she felt really inhibited in being able to express anger. So we really went into curiosity and investigative mode in dealing with our feeling during that meditation. And again, I never once asked you to change the feeling, to manipulate the feeling, to make the feeling go away. I didn't ask you to try to control it, to try to fix it, to try to repair it. Just like last evening with my sister-in-law, right? I didn't go there with her. I didn't go there with her trying to convince her to feel a different way about her circumstances. I sat beside her as she was feeling all of that. And it's a really important lesson in what it means to be truly empathetic. Can you sit beside, next to another person in his or her suffering without trying to make it different, without trying to change it, to repair it, to make it go away, without trying to talk them out of it? And can you do that for yourself, right? Because the last question that I asked as part of that guided meditation was, can you just be with it? Can you just allow it to be here? And part of that question was, can you hold it? Can you befriend it? Can you treat it much as a nurturing mother would treat a child? Okay. So the message part is also really important, because oftentimes our feelings are really important messengers. And one of the things that over time you may find in your mindfulness practices is that certain things will come up. And if you're willing to allow those things to come up, certain insights can arise from those things that come up. For example, if I can work with my anger, allow it to be the guest, kind of hang out with it, maybe ask it, what do you need to tell me? What do you want to teach me? You can learn some pretty fascinating things. And this is one of the things that I learned about anger. And as often as possible, I try to share this with people, both for their own benefit, for your own benefit, but also when you're dealing with others. Okay? So when you take a really, really big feeling like anger, because anger feels big, and you ask and you investigate anger, you will often find that there tends to be three things that are sort of underneath it, kind of floating underneath it. And that if I can sort of attend to those three things that are underneath it, the anger then just changes into something else. It loses its grip, it loses its hold, it loses its power. Okay? And those three things are, and I just want you to think about this, I want you to think about fear, hurt, and helplessness. That almost always beneath anger, you will find fear, hurt, helplessness, or a combination of the three. For many of us, myself included, it is much easier for me to get mad than it is to say, I am really terrified right now. Or what's happening is really scaring me. In my own experience as a mom, this has been particularly true. The times when I was just really terrified for my kids, I found myself going to anger as opposed to admitting to myself and even to them, right? Imagine what it would be like, especially with an unruly teen, if in response to something they're doing that really scares you, rather than getting angry, you sat down with them and said, you know what, I feel really afraid. Okay, so that's the fear part. Helpless and out of control. For some of us, it's much easier, quicker to go to anger than it is to say, I feel completely out of control right now. I don't know what to do about this situation. I am helpless in the face of it. Okay, so there's that helplessness, there's the I'm afraid, and then this is particularly true in our close interpersonal relationships, that oftentimes we will fast track to anger before we will look our beloved in the eye and say, I'm really hurt. I feel really hurt by such and such. Because in order to say, I'm scared, I feel helpless and out of control, and I feel really hurt, is to make ourselves completely vulnerable. I have to be vulnerable to feel those things in the first place. I have to make myself vulnerable to feel the fear, to feel and really touch into helplessness, and to feel hurt. And I also have to be vulnerable and make myself vulnerable when I communicate that to another person. So every time that I feel myself, the physical arousal of anger, because there is a physiology that's attached to our feelings. And part of our work in mindfulness of feelings is getting in touch with what that is for us. So when I'm starting to get angry, the first thing I'll notice is my heart rate changing, my breath changes, I start to get warm, my body temperature changes. I really start to become, and the way that I describe it is emotionally hijacked. It's like something else has taken over my brain and I've lost control of my own thoughts. And if I don't nip that in the bud, right? If I was not aware, these physical sensations are coming up, anger is arriving or anger is fear, I'm going ballistic, right? I've suddenly just completely lost it. So being aware of the physiology of what's happening is part of the message, all right? And it helps us, or it guides us into making a choice about how it is that we want to respond. So when I start to feel those physical sensations arising, if I can just pause just for a moment and say, Christine, in this moment, in what way are you feeling hurt? In what way are you feeling really scared? In what way are you feeling helpless and out of control? If I can go there, I can get some distance from the anger. But I have to be willing to go there because that's a really vulnerable place. I would say that 9 times out of 10, for me personally, when anger is arising, it's because I'm afraid. 9 times out of 10, it's because there's fear. Okay, so this is one of the ways you can start to work with anger. I'm just giving you an example of the messengers that our feelings can be. But the other way that it works really, really interestingly is when someone is coming at me in anger. As human beings, because we are designed to protect ourselves and to survive, we are designed to fight. We are designed to run when we need to. We are designed to freeze, to protect ourselves. So when someone is coming at me with anger, my natural inclination is to do what? It's to meet it with anger, to meet it with defensiveness, to run out of the room, to shut down, as opposed to be responsive to it. So when someone is in front of me in an angered state, and I can again take the pause and ask, Christine, in this moment, in what way might this person in front of you be afraid, be helpless, out of control, feel helpless or out of control, or feel really hurt? That helps me to better deal with what's happening in that moment. But to do that, we cultivate first and foremost this awareness, which is what tonight is about, and what that exercise and that meditation was about. Cultivating an awareness of first, what is arising? Second, what will I call it? What is this? name, define, get some space. And then I went into that investigative mode, color, shape, sound, texture. And then we went into message. Does this have a message for me? Do I have a message for it? And then most important, can I just be with it? Can I just allow it? And can I allow it with a whole lot of kindness? Last night, I really saw my sister-in-law struggling with being kind and loving toward herself for feeling what she was feeling. She was really down on herself for feeling angry, for feeling grieving, for feeling like she was helpless. And I could see that she was feeling a lot of shame about all of those things, right? That we all feel. And so before we leave tonight, I want to give you one other practice. And if you have a pen and a paper, I want you to just jot this down, okay? And this is known as, we call this a self-compassion break. This is something that you can do whenever you're feeling like, you know, I'm on the verge of being on the ledge. I'm on the verge of losing it. I'm on the verge of becoming a really bad version of myself. Okay. It's called the self-compassion break. And this is something I'm going to really focus on at the start of our time next time. And that is this idea that we tend to be brutal on ourselves when it comes to how we feel. As I mentioned earlier, when I get really mad at myself or down at myself, on myself because I'm anxious, okay, we can be very, very critical and brutal to ourselves. So here's the self-compassion break. It has 3 steps to it. Number 1 is to acknowledge that you're suffering or you're struggling. Okay, I'll use myself as an example. I acknowledge that I've got these physiological sensations coming up. I'm starting to get heated. And that anger has arrived. It is here. Okay, I'm suffering. I'm struggling here. Number 1. Step number 2, and this is really important when it comes to feelings. I know that across this planet, right in this moment, there are countless numbers of people who are feeling in the same way or have felt in the same way. And this is what we call connecting to our common humanity. In other words, I am not alone in feeling this way. My sister-in-law is not alone in feeling and in grieving that she didn't have the kind of pregnancy she wanted, in grieving that she did not have the kind of birthing experience that she wanted. And she feels ashamed and embarrassed about that, but step 2 of the self-compassion break is helpful for her because she's not alone. There are women, there are parents all over the planet that are mourning something related to their children, right? So step 1, I'm suffering. This sucks right now, right? I am in the suck of it. Number 2, I know I'm not alone. Number 3, which is most important, be kind. Be kind. If over the next 2 weeks, you practice that self-compassion break, every time you're feeling challenged, uncomfortable, you just put it into practice. You will start to notice that this will come to you as a practice when you are in need. I've been working with this for about the last 6 weeks or so, and I've been very astounded by the degree of self-compassion that it's offered me. because I can be extremely critical and brutal in the way that I treat myself, especially related to feelings. So, a couple of things before we wrap up. Number one, think about your formal practice over the course of the next 2 weeks between now and the next time I see you. I want you to work with feelings. This is mindfulness of feelings. I want, or I suggest or invite you to use your formal practice as a way of investigating a feeling, just as we did, okay? Just as we did in our practice this evening. Start by naming it, locating it, and then going through color, sound, texture, whatever comes to mind, going into message, and then just that allowing. Another way that you can practice for mindfulness of feelings is to come into your formal practice. And here's the way I describe it to kids, all right? Imagining that the mind is just like a big movie screen. And, oh, here comes anger floating across the screen. Oh, here comes irritation floating across the screen. Oh, here comes joy floating across the screen. Whatever it is, it's coming in. Maybe it lingers for a bit, and then it passes. And then something inevitably else will come in. Maybe it's going to linger a bit, and then it passes. No judgment. No, oh, joy is here. I never want to let this go. Okay. Or anger is here. I'm shutting this down. I'm not doing my practice today. Creating that space to just see it moving through and naming it. Joy, anger, fear, elation, grief, whatever it is. Okay. In your email that you'll receive tomorrow related to this lesson, there is a 6-minute guided meditation called Come Back to the Heart. And I created Come Back to the Heart during a time in my life where my own mothering was particularly challenged. And it's a practice that I've continued to use, and I'd love to share it as often as I can. But Come Back to the Heart is a great practice for when you're feeling really, really sort of overwhelmed or swept up by the waters of feeling and emotion. Again, it's 6 minutes, but if you listen to it maybe 3 to 5 times between now and the next time we're together, you will get so familiar with it that you can be anywhere out in the world and you can come back to the heart. And really what that means is when I start to feel snagged, pulled, engulfed, overwhelmed, there's one place that I trust is true sanctuary, true refuge, true home, and that's me. And I like to think about coming back to the heart like this. 7 years old, it's dusk on a really snowy night, and I'm several blocks away building a snow fort. And I hear the sound of my mother's voice calling me home for dinner. I'll never forget that. There was something about the colors in the sky as the sun was setting on that really cold dusk evening. And there was something incredibly comforting about the sound of her voice calling me home. So call yourself home by coming back to you. But that can only happen when you become that tender, compassionate place for you to return. I can be anywhere on the planet. anywhere on the planet. And my home is within me. Okay, so come back to the heart is a practice that starts to connect you to this possibility that you could be sanctuary, refuge, and home to yourself. Okay? There are other links in that email as well. I look forward to seeing you next time. Again, I'm so happy to see all these faces. I'm so happy. Jen and I talk about this all the time. We're so happy to see the cameras on, right, Jen?
Yes, it's very nice to see all your faces for sure. And I'm getting familiar with some of you that always have the camera on. So I'm starting to recognize and know your names, and that feels good too. So we have to pick our winner. We had 10 newbies on the call tonight. So I have this little fishbowl, and I have everybody's number with their names attached on this page. So Marlene Seish, you're number 1. Christina Allen's number 2. Pat Martin, you're number 3. Rebecca Disler is 4. Robert Orlowski is 5. Caitlin Sladowski is number 6. Jenna Kukla is number 7. Scott Bruin-Meyer is number 8. Joe Groschel is number 9. And Ed Copinger is number 10. So I'm going to pick the number, and then I'll remind you of, so I'm not looking. And feels very game showish. And the winner is Christina Allen, number 2. Congratulations.
Woo!
Congratulations, Christina. Thank you so much for being on the call tonight. And I will make sure that Paige has your name tomorrow, and you'll be able to, if you have any questions on what exactly it means to win this bee drawing tonight, you could talk to Paige about that. And you can go onto the portal where we've uploaded all of the videos from week 1 through 4 is up now. After this Wednesday, after the second call for Group B happens with Christine on Wednesday, all of the week 5 content will be up there as well. So you can participate in any sessions that you missed and then be in the drawing for the grand prize. So I think that's right, Paige, right? I know she's on the call. She may not.
Here.
Okay, so if you have any questions, Christina Allen's the winner, Paige, and I encouraged her to reach out to you with any questions at all.
Got it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Are there any questions, anything that we can, Christine or I can answer before we shut the call down? We'll stay on. Christine and I will both stay on for a few minutes, and you're certainly welcome to, we'll open it up.
I also wanted to thank everyone, because I'm just really starting to read through the responses that came through on the chat. And thank you so much. I'm so glad that you use that function. Sometimes it's hard to teach and also be reading at the same time, but I just wanted to acknowledge all of that. Someone who has called in with the number 4991, please email Paige so that she knows your name, okay? She asked me to announce that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tammy, I just got your message. Tammy Hovancook was on the call, and I did not have her in the running. Tammy, how about we add you to the Wednesday new V drawing so that you have an opportunity for that? It looks like Brianna was your sponsor. Okay, so Christine, I'll send you an email on that. We'll add Tammy to the drawing. And Melissa was on the call too? Okay. Okay, so Tammy and Stesha. Okay, it sounds like there's a couple here that were on the call and were not included in that number, those 10 people. If you if you come on late and you drop in, just make sure that we have your information. So I have Tammy, Melissa, and Stesha need to be included on the Wednesday drawing. And it looks like Peg Straka too. Was anyone else? So that's awesome. We had 14 newbies on the call tonight. That's amazing. Thank you everyone who's participated. We'll make sure that all 4 of you are in the drawing for the Wednesday call, even though you attended tonight.
I got them already.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Tammy, for your feedback. I appreciate that. Okay, fantastic. For those of you that joined in tonight and it was new for you and you enjoyed it, please feel free to share that feedback with anyone on your team that isn't participating. So mindfulness sometimes has a lot of preconceived ideas. It could feel a little uncomfortable at first. And then when you get into the content and you realize these are really practical methods and techniques that we could really use, it gets more interesting and we kind of relax. And then we can open to these possibilities of feeling a whole lot better. So I definitely appreciate the feedback. I'm so thrilled that you all joined us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. Lots of great information. Fantastic. Feedback. Lots of feedback. Thank you. Christine and I will stay on a few more minutes. Oh, awesome feedback, Fran. Thank you. All right. Tammy, Melissa, Stesha. Somebody have a bell, a meditation bell? That's what it
It
sounds
was me,
Oh, was it? Okay.
but I don't know what it means.
Oh, I should have mentioned this. There's a couple of you on still, but I'm teaching a free meditation class if you're in the Wilkes-Barre area. That's this Wednesday night at the Luzerne County Historical Society Museum downtown, and it's from 6:30 to 7:30. And there's no fee or anything like that. It is a free. It'll be once a month, taught by Studio B teachers locally. And I would love for you to, if you decide to come, just come over and say hi. I probably should have mentioned that in the beginning. All right, super. All right, well, Christine, I think we could close the call down. Thank you so much. Fantastic information tonight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.